In today's episode of the Metabolic Experience podcast, I get after Lynsey a little bit for making my legs incredibly sore during the metabolic workout of the day where I did 82 squats with a 107-pound kettlebell in 8 minutes. If that doesn't sound hard, give that a shot, guys. Let me know how you feel. It was pretty brutal, but awesome. I may not stand up from this chair afterwards. We then talked about our favorite topic. No, not food. That is our favorite topic. But our 1A is food. 1B is The Office. We talked a little bit about Michael Scott and what makes that show tick. And the last thing, the primary focus of this episode was on muscular hypertrophy, how to make those gains in the gym, how to get bigger within the context of utilizing metabolic training. You're not going to want to miss it. Please check it out. And as always, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes, Stitcher, or Spotify. Love you guys. Thanks for listening. Talk soon. I've never been more grateful for chairs in my life, and I have a major bone to pick with you, Mrs. Abel, because the workout we did today at Metabolic, my leg training was taken to a whole new level. We did, for 8 minutes, you ramp up by twos, so you get a dumbbell or a kettlebell, and you goblet squats by 2, 4, 6, 8, resting as needed for 8 minutes. I made it to 14 in that time with the 106-pound kettlebell. And I did the math. That's 82 squats.
In 8 minutes.
In 8 minutes. Seemed a little excessive, not going to lie. Almost puked. Mm-hmm. Can hardly walk right now. And it's like this nice, comfortable chair I'm in here in the Troy Innovation Garage, I may never stand or get up from this chair. And when I do, I'm going to look like I'm 90. Thank you very much. But
did you die? No. You survived. And you got stronger. And I bet you feel great.
Yeah.
All the wonderful reasons why we do it. Honestly, I get like
you get FOMO.
You get FOMO, like those like hard workouts that like are and you get like you can't stand up or you feel like just so beat up afterward. Like I miss that feeling so much. So like as much as like I'm sure once I give birth to baby Gino and I'm back in the grind of it, I'll be like, well, I miss being pregnant because then I have to do this crap. I really miss that feeling of burnout.
I think that's why it's so hard for me to take recovery days or to do other things because I never want to miss what everybody else is doing. My friends, so many of my friends work out at Metabolic. I'm close with the trainers, and I just have that lead from when I teach class at 5 and 6. I have to do the 7.
Sure.
If I'm coaching, to me in my mind, like I have to do it. Right. I just tortured these people. I just beat the hell out of 90% of them, and they wanted it, guys. It's okay.
That's right.
They asked for it, but at the very least, I need to go through it myself.
Yeah, I agree. And there's always been those times where I've tortured people at 5 and 6, and then when I do it myself at 7, I'm like, ooh.
Yeah.
I was kind of a jerk.
we talk about that often with the rep ranges,
Right.
Like
because we'll hold ourselves to that rep range.
What were we doing last week with the goblet squat? I forgot the exercise or the format of the workout, but it was something where like 4 or 5 reps was tough. And I was asking this one guy, Neil, he's an animal. He looks like a Viking. If you've seen the show Vikings, he looks like, I'm like, dude, you need to go to the casting call. He's like 6'3", probably weighs like 200, 205, shredded.
Strapping man.
Piercing blue eyes, blonde hair, big blonde beard, ripped, strong as hell.
Yes.
Kind of quiet and reserved, but intense when he works out. And would 100% be in the first line of any battle scene in the show Vikings. Like I'll bet my house on it. He would totally be there.
Yeah, you should do it.
Yeah.
But you had held him to what, a 7 or?
Oh yeah. So I was like, Neil, 7. And when I was doing the workout, I was getting like 4 or 5. I'm like, after it, I was like, bro, the next day I was like, bro, I'm sorry. My bad. Because he had texted you later that day. He's like, did Matt get 7?
Of course, yeah.
Because he's like, I was failing at 5. And that's about what I did. So,
yeah. Because you can't when you've given somebody a rep count, you can't then, when you're taking class yourself, not try to achieve that same thing. And sometimes you miss.
Yeah, and I always get this quote wrong. I don't know if it's aim for the moon and you'll hit the stars, or aim for the stars and you'll reach the moon.
Right.
I don't know what it is. I'm gonna say aim for the stars
tomato,
and reach
tomato.
the moon. Tomato. But aim for the stars and you'll reach the moon. If you're going for 7, you'll get that 5.
If
I tell you 5, you'll get 3.
Right.
That's
exactly.
how I view it.
Exactly. So it's a win-win.
Yeah.
Michael Scott, win-win-win. We all win.
God. Sometimes I feel like Michael Scott, honestly. Sometimes I'm like...
Not even close.
Sometimes I'm like, what am I doing?
not even close. But I think
Yeah.
we've all had... I think that's why, like, shows like that, or even like Seinfeld are so funny, because there's moments where, like, you can see yourself in the characters, and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, God, I feel
Yeah.
like this.
Well, it's funny, from a leadership standpoint, it's really hard to admit when you're wrong.
Yeah.
And he never admits when he's wrong, and that's what makes the show funny, because
Right.
he always like tries to backdoor his way out of everything.
Right,
Even
right.
when he's wrong, you know. Like that one episode I was referring to before where he was kind of flirting with that one woman they were selling paper to, and he gave her such a good deal that they lost money
on it.
And Oscar like called him out, and he's like, well, sometimes in business it's good to lose money. It just makes zero sense. But
Right.
to Michael Scott, it made sense.
It made sense because he got a sale.
Yeah.
Well, today we've got a really awesome podcast.
We could talk about The Office for another hour.
I could talk about the podcast, The Office, literally probably all day.
Maybe we should do that sometime.
Maybe we
another
could
episode.
break down The Office.
We'll get mic'd up in the car and we'll drive out to Syracuse. And
There
we'll
you
talk
go.
about The Office.
We had there was somebody. It was one of the guys that Brian works with. Asked us who we thought the stars of The Office were, or who was like The Office like mainly about. And my first was Michael Scott, but they thought that the main sort was Pam and Jim, that like they would be the two. But I think you could go multiple ways with it.
That's actually a really interesting point.
Right?
I think Michael Scott was the heart of that show.
Right.
And in many ways, he was the lifeline of that show.
Yeah, because once he left, it wasn't.
Once he left, it wasn't the same. But the story of Pam and Jim,
right,
I think allowed that show to continue on for 7 or 8 years or whatever it
right.
did. The evolution of their relationship, that served as the plot and the theme of all the shows.
It kind of kept
and then
coming
Michael
back
would come in and do his dumb shit and make it funny.
Although Michael and Holly gave Pam and Jim a run for their money, because I loved Michael and Holly.
Yeah.
I mean, they ended up together anyway, but I just thought that sometimes Michael and Holly remind me of Brian and I, actually, because Brian's a really touchy guy. So like if we're out to dinner, he'll have his hand on my shoulder, or he'll hold my hand, and I think about the PDA episode where like they're having a PDA
I'm
conversation.
trying to remember the last time Kara and I held hands in public. I think it...
She would be like, what are you doing?
Yeah. Maybe walking across the quad in college in like 2002.
Oh yeah, something. No, yeah. When we
neither
walk the
of
dog,
us are super touchy-feely like that, or like huggy or anything like that. We're not. You guys are Italian though. You Italians
well, that's
much more touchy-feely.
Yeah, we kiss hello, we kiss goodbye. You kiss when you go to the bathroom. You hug before, you just, it never stops.
The hug can be awkward though, like. Because some people you don't know if they're huggy or not. So
right.
Like, I always just go fist pound.
Yeah, can't go wrong.
Yeah, because like, and especially as an employer, like, I like being, I don't like being unprofessional and hugging my female trainers.
Sure,
so I kind of just dab them up. And,
right.
And if they go in for a hug, I'll hug them. But like, I'm never going to like force that.
Go for it, yeah. Yeah, I think in professional settings that you never go wrong with like a good fist pound or pat on the back or something.
You can go wrong with a fist pound though, because like you don't know
go
this.
For the turkey. What is it called? The turkey or something?
There's some claw.
Yeah,
I forgot the name of it. But like you go fist pound and then you're going handshake, and while you go handshake, the person that went fist pound, they go handshake, you go fist pound. So you end up doing this like dance, and then you just grab the top of their head.
And it's just like an awkward,
Bottom line, if you're going to fist pound or handshake, you commit to it and you stick to it and you ride it out. It might get a little awkward if you both ride it out, but you stay strong.
Right. It's like rock, paper, scissors. You commit to what you're going to.
You commit to it and you hold it.
That's right.
All right, now we can get into the episode. Got that out of our system.
That's right. Now we've talked about it. So we're going to be giving you guys a blueprint for muscle gain today, right? Talking about the key principles to building more muscle when you're utilizing metabolic training.
Yeah, and I think we wanted to focus on that aspect of it. We're really catering it to developing muscle within the confines of using metabolic training as your primary training philosophy. I've said it multiple times in the past. I will say it again. If building muscle is your primary sole goal and that's really all you care about, to be honest, and I'm just being straight up, metabolic training is probably not the best system for you. There's why reinvent the wheel. Bodybuilders do what they do for a reason, because it works. Okay, but if you're after an increased level of fitness, strength, cardiovascular conditioning. You want to be lean. You want that fit look that I keep talking about with Cristiano Ronaldo. Maybe he'll come on the show someday.
I gotta look up Cristiano Ronaldo. I don't know who it is.
Oh my God, you don't know who he is? Are you serious?
No,
don't look him up now because you'll get distracted. He's like a guy that won the genetic lottery. Like he's like an extremely good-looking.
How do you know him?
He's a Portuguese soccer player.
Oh, okay.
He played for Manchester United, Real Madrid.
I was gonna say.
Either Real Madrid or what's the other team there? I forgot. Barcelona. I think it was Real Madrid he plays for. And now he's on Juventus in Italy, my barber Dom's team. But those guys, he makes like $50 million a year. Like they get paid. But so this guy makes $50 million a year.
Yeah.
Best looking guy probably on the world. Like in China, he's like a god.
Oh,
like when they showed it, they had I think it was an HBO Real Sports documentary thing, and they showed it. It's like scary. Like
Could you imagine?
He's like the Beatles. He really is.
That's
like
crazy.
it's like that Michael Jordan, like that level of fanfare. But he's been an underwear model. Like he's really ripped. He's got muscle for a soccer player, but he's not huge.
Right.
Like he's just got that leaner physique.
Athletic physique.
Yeah, that athletic physique, but with some muscle to him. He's not like a skinny soccer player. He's got a little beef to him. He's a little thicker on the soccer player side, but lean as hell. But anyways, if you're going after that, if that sounds good to you and you're a guy,
sounds good to me.
Keep watching. And honestly, I think I'm making a pyramid of things that are important when it comes to deciding what training program works best for you. And I'll give a little spoiler alert, but at the top of the pyramid is what is optimal. And I think that should actually come last. Right. That's the last part of a program. And first and foremost, you got to find something that you can sustain because you enjoy it. Right. And, metabolic training is something that we all enjoy. So rather than force people to build muscle using a system that they don't enjoy, which they won't do, let's find a way to optimize the amount of muscle you can build in metabolic training and go from there. And I think that's a smarter approach because ultimately that's what's going to allow you to sustain this forever. And I think for 90% of the people out there, you can build muscle in metabolic training. I'm not saying you can't. You maybe won't get as huge as you would have otherwise, but you'll still build a lot of lean muscle, especially if you follow our advice today.
Oh yeah, I remember when so the first time I ever did macros, got down to I think it was like 115 pounds, and I wasn't utilizing metabolic training principles as much. I was focused more on diet. I think I was dabbling. I remember you yelling at me a lot to come in and work out more. And I was very lean.
You were skinny.
But I was skinny. Like I didn't have much of an ass. I always have an ass, but like it was, for me, it was not very big. I got kind of wiry looking. Yeah. And then rewind to, however many years later when I did the bodybuilding show, everybody asked what I was doing in terms of strength training for the bodybuilding show. And it was just metabolic. It's just that I had done metabolic for probably 4 or 5 years and then went back into a caloric deficit in order to lose the body fat over it.
Right.
But my body at 115 looked so different than it did when I was 115 previous. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
it was 100%
added
a result.
At least 8 to 10 pounds of lean muscle mass.
And it was 100% a result of metabolic training.
Yeah.
It was nothing else.
So Lynsey's kind of selling herself short. She's being a little humble here. When we went to this show, what was that, 2016?
2016, I think,
Spring of 2016. It's 3 years ago now.
Yeah, 3.
Lynsey went there and won her pro card in the OCB, which is a very respected natural bodybuilding organization, in her first shot in the women's figure division. So it wasn't like she was like a muscular girl that just, because you could probably win a bikini show if you just leaned out and you didn't even work out, because genetically you have that much muscle mass to you.
Right.
But she won a level in a competition style that requires the women to have muscularity. Yeah. And to go there and win the overall and her pro card in her first time, it was truly amazing. It was we were in Syracuse in this, it was like a theater called the Carrier Center. And it was small. It probably seated maybe 300, 400 people.
3 to 5, yeah.
Yeah, and we had 80% of the people were metabolic. So I don't know if you won because the judges felt fearful for their lives. No, I'm just kidding. She totally deserved to win. That was like, yes, like that was like positive affirmation. That, and like a big like shout out to everyone out there that metabolic training isn't fluff. Like, it builds 100%. Muscle. In fact, at that show, we delivered 2 pro cards. We did. That show with you guys, with Courtney as well, and in the bikini division. And Courtney ended up going up against like a really respected, very seasoned competitor who's a pretty prevalent figure prominent figure on YouTube, Kara Corey, and Kara Corey looked great. She looked awesome, and Courtney ended up slightly edging her out for her pro card, which I thought was a huge testament because Kara Corey is like. She competes a lot. She looks amazing.
Oh, yeah.
She's got a great physique.
It's her career. It's her life. She's a nutritionist, but yeah.
And the fact that Courtney was able to edge her out on that day said a lot about the system 100%. And the program and all that stuff. So, yeah, just wanted to get that out there for those listening that this is geared at using metabolic training. I think for those of you who are on the fence but don't think you can build muscle doing metabolic training, keep on listening because we're going to dive into that. So the first point I want to make is Dr. Brad Schoenfeld is the leading researcher in all things related to muscular hypertrophy. I mean, if you were to ask any fitness expert out there, they will point his way. The guy does all sorts of research articles. He's a professor. I apologize. I forgot where he teaches out of. I think it's down in New York City somewhere, Long Island. He teaches exercise science. Really smart guy, brilliant guy. But back in 2010, he did a research paper where he pretty much identified 3 key elements to gaining size. And that's what this episode is about, how to develop lean muscle. And I just want to say, it's not about bulk, it's about the development of lean muscle. Right. So for you women out there, don't shut this off right now. I'm not talking about trying to make you look like you play for the 49ers and you're going to be a linebacker. Right. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about those precious 1 to 2 pounds of lean muscle that are really hard to add, guys. Yeah. Go grab a raw piece of steak that weighs a pound. It's significant, all right? That's hard to put on your body. We're going to help you do that. All on your glutes, of course, so keep on listening.
Only in the key areas.
So there's 3. There's mechanical tension, there's muscular damage, and there's metabolic stress. So real quickly, I'm not the type that is gonna like throw jargon and all these fancy terms at you guys to impress you. I'm trying to make this something that you can understand and apply yourself.
Right.
And that's the style I much prefer with all this stuff. But mechanical tension simply refers to the load, the amount of weight you're using. There is a heavy stimulus for growth when your body's like, whoa, what is this? Right. Like that amount of tension on the muscle that's created from that load is immense. All right. So, that's a key element of getting a muscle bigger. The second one, muscular damage, that's simply tearing apart the muscle fibers and forcing them to repair and grow. And that comes from 2 different things in my mind. The volume you use, the amount of sets and reps that you're doing will add up and certainly contribute to that muscular damage. And the other one is focusing on the eccentric component of your lifts. If you've ever done a set of negative only chin-ups, remember when I used to have to do those?
I do.
So I always tell people, they always ask me, like, what's the best ab workout I can do? And I say, do negative only chin-ups to failure.
100%.
So if you just go up to a chin-up bar and control yourself down for 5 to 10 seconds, if you get like 8 to 10 reps of that, your lats are going to be sore, but your abs, just from that eccentric isometric tension, there's a gnarly effect where you're going to be sore. So muscular damage, you'll feel sore from that. Mm-hmm. And the last one, metabolic stress, is metabolite accumulation. When your body runs out of oxygen, when your muscles run out of oxygen to supply to the blood, to the muscle, metabolites are released. And by that I mean like lactate, and that's why you feel the burn. So metabolic stress refers to like the pump. All right. So if you ever do a set of like lying band leg curls for like anything over a minute and you keep a smooth tempo with a contraction, your hamstrings feel pumped and gorged full of blood, start to burn. Right. That's metabolic stress. So contrary to what you might think, metabolic training utilizes components of all of this. Mm-hmm. I mean, obviously we do focus on metabolic stress, I would say largely with most of our templates, but I'm proud to say that we definitely have a heavy focus on mechanical tension, and we always have a decent amount of volume, which will get that damage, and we always focus on the eccentric component. Sometimes really accentuated, which will we should do that more, by the way. Right. I think we should do that a little more. But negatives. Now that we got out this new toy, we have a spoiler alert. We have a new toy coming into the mix next week for our studios. That's pretty exciting. That'll allow us to utilize some slower negatives too.
That's right. We're getting very excited for this new toy.
Yes, we are. So just to establish, everything we say here is based off those 3 preferences, all right? And I think in the show notes, or those 3 principles, in the show notes, we can kind of relist those out and make sure that you guys get a chance to review that again and understand that. Yep. But I've identified key principles to building more muscle by utilizing metabolic training. And the first one is training in a caloric surplus.
Yeah, I think, you've got to be able to eat enough to support your lifestyle. If you want to add size, you need to add some food in there. So eating in a way that's appropriate and fueling your body with, good fuel is going to fuel good workouts. Because, obviously, call it what it is. If you're in a severe deficit and you're trying to lift a heavier load to create the mechanical tension, you're trying to have those intense workouts, you're not going to be able to. You're going to run out of juice. So it's going to feel terrible. So eating enough to support the muscle gain is, I think that's why we have it at number one, because you've got to do it.
Exactly. And it costs energy for your body to physically build a pound of muscle. You need to be in a caloric surplus. This is the beauty of, I think, macro tracking, that people think macro tracking is just for burning fat. It gets kind of a bad rap.
It does.
And I actually think in some ways it is almost a more powerful weapon in a lean gaining program.
Yeah.
Because so often when people are putting on size, they just go on like what's called a dreamer's bulk and they just eat whatever they want. Now, I will say this. I actually, a small part of me, not a small part, a significant part of me thinks that if you don't care what you look like and you're willing to just kind of let go a little bit, then and put on some body fat, you will add some significant amount of muscle and you can cut it down. And that's why, to use you as an example, like, not that you gained a ton of body fat, but like when you were going through those phases after that first cycle of macro where you were eating more, eating what you wanted, that served a purpose. It allowed you to fuel your body, recover, build muscle, and just ensure that you are in that caloric surplus. So you can build muscle in a caloric deficit. I'm not one of those people that doesn't think you can. Mm-hmm. You just won't build nearly as much of it. You won't get nearly as strong.
Right.
It's not as ideal in that setting. So I would say a caloric surplus, start small, 200 to 300 calories over maintenance is a good way to look at it. And if you don't know what maintenance is, guys, it's a moving number. It moves all the time, but just simplify it for yourself. Maintenance level of calories, weigh yourself every day for a week. Look at what you ate.
Right.
If you did not gain weight or lose weight, that is your maintenance amount of calories, the average, all right? So that's all it is. It's a moving number, but that's all it means. So you got to add up all the calories for the week, though. So that's 6,000 calories Saturday. You got to include that in there.
And then divide it all out.
Divide it all out by 7, and that's your maintenance number, and go from there. But number one, if we're talking about putting on muscle, a slight caloric surplus can go a very long way. I think especially a lot of our female listeners are very afraid to do this.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not talking about having 1,000 calorie surplus, because you're going to gain body fat significantly if you do that. But eating more carbs, especially for a lot of women out there, eating more protein. There are a lot there. It's really hard for your body to store protein as body fat. It's a very inefficient storage. Your body will store it, but it's last on the list. It's very costly metabolically, and they've done studies on this. So it's hard to store protein as body fat. So if I'm in a surplus, I like focusing on protein and carbs. I always have, and that's just me because I do a glycolytic form of training in metabolic. I like to keep my fats kind of moderate, just because fat is the easiest macronutrient for your body to store as fat. So if you are in a surplus, it can get a little more dangerous there.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you. I'm in total agreement. I think protein, carbs, and like you said, I think a lot of women in particular are afraid of the caloric surplus, especially if they've gotten down to a certain weight and they want to add size or they want to add some more lean muscle, but they're afraid to do that. My biggest recommendation, do not be afraid. Like you said, it doesn't need to be 1,000 calorie surplus. It's a couple hundred calories. It's going to help fuel good workouts. You'll see the results. And then, when you do kind of cut back again, you'll be amazed at the difference that you see in your body. Yeah, you
need to be willing to put the time in to make the gains, you know. And the timing of this podcast, it's July 3rd. It's actually Zeke in Utah, my dogs. It's their birthday today.
That's what we should have talked about. Happy birthday.
I got to stop talking about it. I'm going to start crying. But July 3rd, not great timing to tell people to go eat in a surplus. It's beach season, pool season. I get that, guys. But keep this in the back of your mind as we get into the fall, especially. And you want to have a little bit of a higher calorie weekend. There's football on Saturday and Sunday. You want to relax a little bit. Maybe you just keep your caloric intake where it is and you allow more calories to slide in there on the weekend, thus bringing up your daily average,
Sure.
which is another way to do it that I often recommend, actually. That works very well. So don't be afraid of putting on a little body fat.
Nope.
Just monitor your weight, monitor your waist. A good rate of weight gain for women, I would say, is anywhere between 0.25 to 0.5 pounds a week on average. For guys, 0.5 to a pound a week on average is solid. I wouldn't go faster than that if you're looking to keep lean gains, because it sounds insignificant. But if you're a woman and you spend 4 months in a surplus and you add 1/4 pound a week, that's 4 or 5 pounds of body mass that you've added, which is probably about the most of them are looking to add.
100%.
So that's a good way to do it. Of course, if you want to go faster, you'll probably add more muscle doing that.
Right.
Just know that you may put on a little more body fat.
Right. Our point number 2 is going to be training intensity. So obviously, if you're looking to build muscle, you need to be training intensely.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it sounds kind of funny, but so many people, they want to know the diet, they want to know the workout plan, they want to know the sets, the reps, the volume, and get out these Excel spreadsheets and plug everything in there. And guys, none of that shit matters if you're not willing to work hard.
Right.
Like, you've got to work hard to build muscle. Your body doesn't want to build muscle, especially if you're me, guys. It's
costly.
been very hard. I am not a 6'2", 225-pound guy with Jamaican parents, but I'm just your average 5'8", 160-pound white dude that it's hard for me to add muscle mass. So I have added muscle mass over the years. Like I kind of use your high school body weight as a weight that you would weigh if you were, for guys. For women, I think it's a little different, but for guys, it's kind of like high school, maybe sophomore year in college for some of us. When you're 19 or 20, the weight you weighed if you just did nothing, if you just hung out, did nothing. I think I was like 145 pounds, maybe 150 pounds. So like, that's how much my body wants to weigh if I don't train at all.
Yep.
So for me to keep this amount of muscle mass, which I know it's impressive, guys, on my physique, I've got to train hard. You've got to give it a reason to grow. You've got to give it a reason to change.
To adapt.
That's bro science. But anyone who's done this for a long time, you're going to rely on anecdote and bro science.
Right.
You're going to. You can't read a textbook to tell you all these things. And you've got to work your ass off if you want to add muscle to your body. Like, over time, and just be consistent over time. You've got to break down the muscle fibers. You've got to adhere to those 3 points I made at the beginning. And that all comes to me. We could talk about volume and metabolic stress and all this stuff. If you're not training with intensity, utilizing those principles, you might as well just start running.
Right. Yeah, I think the people that we see in the gym that have the biggest body transformations are the people that come in and kick their ass.
Yeah.
The ones that are lifting appropriate loads, that are challenging for them, that are, utilizing all the things that we're going to talk about in the next, 7 or 8 points. But yeah, the more intensity you can add to your workouts, the more benefit you're going to see from it. You'll still see, if you just come to class and put in the time, your body will change, sure. But if you're looking to see some like real adaptations, you've got to force your body to adapt.
Yeah, so let's talk about that for a quick second, because I think the word intensity gets lost on a lot of you guys out there, and understandably so.
Yeah.
I think the mindset for a lot of people is they're trying to defeat a movement, or they're trying to beat it, when that's all wrong when it comes to intensity. And I'll give you an example. Say you're doing a floor press that's heavy. Instead of like trying to like beat the exercise or survive it or just get the weight up
grind through it.
You should be looking at every eccentric that you do as an opportunity to get that eccentric in. You should be trying to use a full range of motion, knowing that that's going to fully fatigue the muscle fibers. So the intense road is the hard road.
Yes.
That's hard, because that takes a lot of self-discipline. And, intensity doesn't mean scrapping your way through something, trying to defeat an exercise. Because, guys, when you've done this as long as I have, I can promise you the weights will always defeat you. There is not a human being out there. I don't care if you're the Mountain, the world's strongest man. I don't know how to pronounce his name, but he's the guy from the mountains. He's the world's strongest man in Game of Thrones. But you will be defeated. So why not have that mindset that, okay, I'm going to work hard. I'm going to try and get more weight up for more reps. but I'm not going to sacrifice my technique to do that.
Right.
And I'm going to really use pristine form on the movements. I am so much more impressed with, as a guy, somebody who uses 70 pounds on a floor press with strict form and really works through that level
100%.
of fatigue by pushing through that midpoint without lifting their hips, with sticking to that discipline, if that makes sense. Then the guy who just slaps around the 90s or the 100s and it's just sloppy, you know, and there's no time under tension, there's no concern for range of motion. You can tell they're just surviving the movement to get a number of reps, which you'll build some incidental muscle doing that, but it's not going to be as significant as it would be if you put your full focus on intensity.
100%. There's a woman that works out at 7 a.m. in Green Island. Her name is Michelle. And it was probably like a month ago now. But at the end of class, I went up to her and I was like, I have to tell you, I respect the hell out of the way you train. She wasn't, you know, like going after the heaviest weights possible, but she kept constant time under tension. She was like squeezing reps at the top. She was going, you know, like she was just, everything that she was doing looked purposeful. The cardiovascular movement she was doing, you know, to the best of her abilities. But when it came to the strength stuff, you know, she wasn't like jerking up her rows with the kettlebell. Everything looked under control, purposeful, and she was challenging herself. And I was like, I respect the hell out of the way you train, because I can tell you are purposefully working out right now, and that's awesome.
Yeah, I think a last point I'll make about intensity is when the mechanical tension is high. The definition of intensity, actually, in strength and conditioning is not effort. It's the percentage of your 1 rep max that you're using on any given movement. So it makes sense, though, because when your mechanical tension is high, when your weight is up there, if you're using good, clean form that's consistent, the intensity will kind of take care of itself.
Right.
You see that a lot on presses and squats and things like that. But when you get into like lateral raises and things that require you to tap into like
banded
metabolic
workouts,
stress and bicep curls, I see this a lot. Man, like you've got to really understand how to really optimize that effort and that level of intensity. A lot of times in class, I'll grab like the 25s on bicep curls the same weight as a lot of like the stronger women.
Sure.
And they'll see me do it and they'll be like, why are you using those? And I'll be like, because this is what I need to fatigue the muscles properly.
Right.
I can grab the 40s and throw them up there.
Right. And probably use your back and your
use other muscles, but I'm not trying to impress anyone for the gram. You know, I'm trying to build
build your biceps.
So, and the irony is, in doing that, you do build a more impressive physique.
Right.
So, our next point is making the mind-muscle connection. And I tried to sequence these in a way where they tie into each other, and I think this kind of relates to what we just talked about.
Yeah, for sure. I think, you know, it's similar to what you were just speaking about with, you know, obviously creating metabolic stress, but, you know, there's so many times in the gym, and this is one of the pet peeves of Matt and mine, where somebody will be doing like a banded leg curl or someone, and they'll say, I don't feel it, you know, and
like a badge of honor.
Right, as if that means like that they're stronger than the exercise. And like you said, the exercise will always win. It's not a good thing if you can't feel it. Doesn't mean that you've beaten it. Right.
Drives me nuts.
Right. It's, you know, we might just not be focusing on the right movement, or we're not doing it right. So making that mind-muscle connection. So if you're doing that lying band hamstring leg curl, so the band is hooked around your Achilles and you're keeping your hips down, squeezing the hell out of your hamstrings as you drive your heels towards your glutes, really activating the hamstring, and then coming back down, you will feel that in your hamstrings if you're actively thinking about it. But if you're just kind of sitting around and pumping your legs up and down, obviously, you know, you're not going to feel it. But if you want to build the muscle and increase your training intensity as we build up on top of these, you've got to make those mind-muscle connections.
Just think about this logically, guys. If you're doing a set of dumbbell lateral raises and you do not ever feel it at all in your delts, why would your delts develop?
Right.
You can't even feel the muscle fibers working. It's critical. This is a very important point. Yeah. You've got to feel the targeted muscle fibers being recruited. If you don't feel it, you might need to alter the mechanics of the movement depending on your body type. If you're doing a press, you might need to play with your elbow position. If you're doing a row, you might need to play with where you bring the resistance to activate different parts of your back musculature. But you've got to feel it, guys. I can't stress that enough. It's so important. Because your brain doesn't know, Lynsey did 10 push-ups.
Right.
She's going to develop pecs. Your brain doesn't just know this thing your brain doesn't see the damn whiteboard.
Right.
And your brain doesn't see sets and reps. Your brain feels the three things that Dr. Schoenfeld talked about: mechanical tension, muscular damage, metabolic stress. Your brain connects with your musculature to sense these things and to make adaptations over time. But if you're just doing something just to do it and you don't feel it, there's no way in hell you're damaging the muscle. Right. You're not getting metabolic stress. You might be doing something with a little bit of mechanical tension, but like we're saying, you might be calling in the wrong muscle fibers to elicit the force that you need to lift the weight. Yeah. And just ask yourself, are you doing this to be a weightlifter? Are you just trying to lift weights? Right. Or are you trying to get stronger and develop your body? And those are two different things, because a weightlifter just needs to move a resistance from point A to point B. Someone who is strength training and bodybuilding is looking to target a certain muscle and improve the level of strength within that muscle.
Yeah. Yeah, this is, there's one of our trainers, Angie, shout out to Angie, but she was talking to me about how when she does RDLs, that she can go up to heavy weights. She was going all the way down to the floor, coming back up, and the only place she felt it was her back. She said it wasn't, and not in a, it felt like musculature in her back, but it was mostly in her back. So we looked at her form, broke it down, and she was just going down a little too far. So she was going down to a depth that she started to recoup her back first, and then she went in for the hamstrings. Whereas if she just shallowed her range of motion a little bit to keep the tension in the hamstrings the whole time, and then drove it back up to the top, she noticed a huge difference when she started connecting the mind muscle. So when she originally started doing the RDL, she was just thinking about doing the RDL.
Right.
She wasn't connecting it to her body, her muscles, where she was feeling it. Once she started to break it down to her body and where she needed to feel it, she could stop that tension, where she could keep that tension in the hamstrings and then drive up. And she said her hamstrings have never been so sore in her life. So I think it's, sometimes even those of us that are like very well-rounded in strength training, it's easy to kind of just move through something. Right. And when you actually really start to break it down and make those mind muscles, where am I actually feeling this? Where do I want to feel it? Make the connection and then make it happen.
Yeah, so that's an interesting exercise and point. And I have a theory about this because I've learned how to feel RDLs in my hamstrings, but I kind of understand that. I'm not a flexible guy, but my hamstrings are decent. Mm-hmm. So if you have decently flexible hamstrings...
You're the RDL champion.
Well, if you have decently flexible hamstrings, you need to really think about what you're doing. Right. A lot of that comes from me for just squeezing my glutes at the top. Right. That kind of helps get that activation going in those muscles. But the hamstrings are interesting because they really serve two purposes. They assist with hip extension and then knee flexion, right? So there's two components to it. In an RDL, we're not getting a lot of knee flexion, like in a banded leg curl, say, or a leg curl machine at the gym. So you're not really ever getting that shortened part of the range of motion. There's a couple parts. You got to stretch the muscle fibers, which is why full range of motion is important. Right. And then you need to fully contract them. So you're getting a little bit of a contraction that you shorten by standing tall in an RDL, but it's not quite as much. So you just have to understand the mechanics of everything you're doing as well, and that might be part of it too. Our next point, it's progressive overload. It might seem obvious, but you need to lift more weight for this more rep weight for the same reps, or the same weight for more reps over time. Over time. It doesn't have to happen linearly. It's not going to happen every single week after week after week after week. But if you use the same resistance for the same rep count, for the same time under tension, every single time, you're not going to adapt. Your body's not going to have anything to adapt to. Right. So that's a critical point. But what I want to say about this, and touch on this a little bit here, is that there are other ways to progressively overload the musculature without lifting heavier and heavier and heavier and heavier, because there is going to, guys, that we have a ceiling. Like, I've been training for 20 years now, 20 years consistently. I know, you can tell. I've been training for 20 years, and if it was linear, I'd be bench pressing 500 pounds by now, but I can't. So there's a cap to this. So other ways to overload that kind of override that strength limitation, cut down your rest periods, get more work done in less time, be a little more intense, use drop sets, supersets, things that will increase the intensity. Those are also ways to progressively overload. But the aspect of it I just wanted to focus on was just being cognizant of lifting more reps or more weight for more reps over time. Yep. Now, the caveat here, and I'm sorry I get excited about this one, the carrot here is you need to standardize your form, okay? 3-second negatives, full range of motion every single time, all right? And if you do that, and you do get stronger over time, you're going to add muscle.
Right.
If you do 3-second negatives with a light weight and then it starts becoming 2 and you start shortening the range of motion
Right.
and you're bouncing and you're cheating and you're using other muscles, that's not progressive overload, guys, because
Right.
all you're overloading is your ego.
Right. Yeah, just because you moved up 2 kettlebell colors doesn't mean that you're actually getting stronger if your
Nope.
form looks like crap. But yeah, no, perfectly said there. I think you nailed it. And I think that's one of the coolest parts about metabolic training, the way that we run it, is we do, I mean, obviously our programming changes every day, but similar strength patterns come up enough that clients can really see, as long as they're, doing the things like you said, focusing on controlled negatives and keeping a standard for their lifting, which I think our clients have really kind of adapted and gotten around, specifically in the last couple months or so. But the same movements will come up enough that they can see themselves getting stronger and better, and they can witness that progressive overload happening, and that's part of the reason why it's such an exciting program to be a part of.
Yeah, and I actually didn't include exercise variety
Yep.
on this list, but honestly, because it's not as important as people think it is,
Right.
and I think when you're adhering to principles of intensity, tension, damage, metabolic stress, when you're doing that, you can ride some of these exercises into the ground.
Yeah.
I think the variety comes from different amounts of time under tension,
that's it,
different tempos, different sequencing. But man, when you find those exercises that are your money makers, your bread and butter, you ride those things into the sunset.
Yeah.
You take them as far as you can. And you and I have recently started kind of simplifying our programming a little bit. And the variety will assist with making the workouts more fun, making them more engaging, making them more likely for you to be something you can sustain over time. But that's really what it comes down to. You need to be able to progressively overload those movements.
Yeah. Moving into our next point is going to be recovery. So this is, we've talked about this a couple times.
You
in
should
different
take
ways.
the lead on this one, because this is my worst point, admittedly.
Matt is not great at recovery.
I'm getting better.
But you are getting better. I'm proud of you. Matt was going to do, 1 day off? You were considering possibly doing 1 day off.
Wednesdays.
It lasted 1 week.
I did it one week.
He did a good job. And I think you still did
Guys, I think I have
lift
adult
outside that.
ADD, so it's just not my style. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but recovery is important. If you're looking to build muscle, so again, that's what we're talking about here. If you're actually looking to add size, you want to allow yourself to recover. So, getting appropriate sleep, obviously making sure that your nutrition is good, but maybe giving yourself a rest day or two kind of mixed into, if you're waking up so sore, you can't move, you feel like, you're completely just at a standstill, you're so rocked. That might be a good day to go for a walk, take the dogs out, go for a swim, do something that's outside, and then the next day you're coming back in and getting, hitting your lifts as intensely as you can, to make sure you're getting the maximum benefit out of that movement. So
yeah. Sorry.
That's okay. No, go ahead.
Sorry to cut you off there. I had something I wanted to add to that. I think part of it too comes to the beauty of metabolic training is you can understand that you're in that state and you can still come in the gym.
Right.
Maybe you go a touch lighter that day and you just get blood flowing into the muscles. I have actually found that helps my recovery.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not crushing my CNS with heavy weights. If you're like me and you have you're intense and you have a tough time not bringing your best, you might be better off just doing something else, going through a mobility flow, going to a high yoga class, doing a spinning class, something active that does not crush your central nervous system and rip apart your muscle fibers as much. But before you take days off and look at that, if you're getting 5 hours of sleep at night, let's just stop all this whole conversation right there. That's just not enough.
Right.
Okay, it's not. So focus on getting at least 7, 6.5, 7. And we will then carry the conversation into diet and protein and things like that and days off. But if you're not getting at least 6.5, 7 hours of sleep, there's nothing else we need to talk about. That is when you don't get enough sleep, your body will release cortisol, which is a really catabolic hormone. You will not recover. You're going to feel tired. You're going to feel like shit.
Yep.
And you're not going to optimize your gains. And sleeping is huge. We have such a funny culture with sleeping that I think it's hysterical. I don't think there's anything wrong if you work from home or you have the type of job. I've told my trainers this. I told my videographer Kyle this yesterday. I believe in naps.
Yeah.
I believe in naps. If you can take a nap that's maybe a half hour in length, not much longer than that. If you take a nap that's about a half hour in length, beautiful.
Yes.
You know, and that allows you to be more productive later in the day and to recover a little bit. Go for it.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that. But we have this weird culture where that means you're lazy or that means you're not working, you know. But I've been way more productive doing that. Like when you and I go to Uncommon Ground, sometimes I'll take a nap at like 2. We'll go to the coffee shop at 3, and I'm like more with it.
100%.
You're probably like, what the hell are you talking about? You're never with it.
But that's not true.
My brain's usually fried by that time. But my point is this: on the days I go right through, my brain is fried, and it's hard to even think. So think about what your body's going through. So recovery is a key part. If you're a 5-day-a-week type person, Monday through Friday, take the whole weekend off.
Yeah, for sure.
I think that's the most common thing I'd recommend. If you're like me in the midweek, I'm more likely to take a Saturday off than a Wednesday.
Yeah.
Come back fresh on Monday. I feel better doing that. But you got to find what works for you.
Yeah, 100%. It's funny, Brian and I have talked about that whole like lazy culture thing, or like if you talk to somebody.
We're on opposite ends of the spectrum in recovery.
That's true. He's very big into recovery.
Yes.
But like we've talked about before, where like if I'm talking to like, you know, whoever out in the public, and I'm like, you know, oh yeah, you know, I go to bed every night at, you know, 8:30 or 8 o'clock, or like if you say, you know, I try to take a nap in the middle of the day, they're like, oh, must be nice. Your life must be so cushy. And I'm like, well, no, if I'm more productive in my time because I take a nap, does that, like, why is that cushy, or why is that, you know? But it is. It's like a weird.
Europeans, I think they're always ahead of us. They haven't figured out.
They're onto something. I'm telling you.
Those siestas.
Right.
That's where it's at.
That's it. So yeah, get your sleep. It's important. Even if you know, you just put yourself to bed at a certain time. It doesn't mean you have to fall asleep right at 8, but like get into bed, start winding down.
Part of that is knowing your spouse too. Kara has a habit of wanting me to go through my whole day, and if you're a guy out there listening, I'm sure you can relate. But I don't always want to run through my whole day. But I kind of summarize it for her. And sometimes if we talk about the gym or work, or I get a little jacked up, and I know that's going to happen, so I'll go to bed at like 8 o'clock.
Yeah.
Because I know she's going to come in and talk to me for a half an hour.
Right.
I'm going to get a little jacked up. It's going to take me another half hour to lay down.
To go back down.
I like to read before I fall asleep. That really just kind of puts me to sleep. It's incredible. Sometimes I'm reading something, and I feel myself falling asleep. I put the book or the iPad down, and I can't sleep.
Yeah, oh yeah,
so
yeah.
It's funny.
100%.
It's like a lullaby.
I could scroll through Instagram for 2 hours sitting in bed.
Oh yeah.
But if I'm like reading a book, or like if I've got something, I'm the same.
I do a lot of. I use my iPad for that. I like to do a lot of reading. I know it's got.
You should wear blue light glasses.
I need blue light glasses, I guess.
We've got a spare pair at home. They're really attractive. I'll let you see them. Brian got us matching blue light glasses at one point.
That does not change at all.
All right, so moving on to point number 6, and this is one of my favorites on our list for building muscle using metabolic training, but stick to recommended rep ranges for a given exercise. Made a little side note here, don't try to lift heavier but fall far short on your rep target ranges. So one of the things that we do with metabolic training is we marry the concepts of time under tension and rep ranges.
Yep.
So, you know, it's for our strength-based exercises. So let's say it's a floor press. You know, today we did a floor press, 45 seconds, 2-second pause at the bottom, driving up to top. I think the rep range was around 10 to 12 reps is what we ended up falling within in that time. You want to marry the weight that you're using with the rep counts that you were given with the time that you're using. So you have a consistent rep count, a consistent cadence to make sure that your standard for lifting is consistent.
This sounds like one of those Mormon polygamous marriages. There's a bunch of things getting married here. So you're spot on. You got to marry the cadence, the tempo of the lift with the rep count, with the designated time under tension. Doing something for 45 seconds, saying it's no different than saying you do something for 10 reps and then you just bang it out. If you bang something out in 20 seconds that should have taken 45, those are 25 less seconds that your muscles were under tension.
Right.
So that the damage will be less. All right. So if that's what you're going for, great. But that's not why you're listening to this. You want to build muscle. So you really hold yourself accountable in your metabolic sessions. And that's one of the main reasons I like time under tension, because it forces you to marry all those three things. It forces you to merge them together. If you just focus on them without that, if you take time under tension out of it, we've all done that, guys. Go down in 3 seconds, lift as fast as you can. What happens? You don't do it. You just go faster. But when you're held to that standard of marrying it together, it really makes you work. It works the other way too. Sometimes you might go too light, It makes you go
Right.
a little bit heavier and really get the weights ready in time, get them lifted, get them ready to go, and push yourself to that point. So I think it works both ways there. Simple point, but super key.
Yeah, I think a lot of people too will often ask, like, how do I know when it's time to move up in weights, like in a metabolic class? And I think this is a great indicator of that. Like you said, if you're, popping the weights up to the top, you're getting a good 3-second negative, a 1-second positive, and the rep range is 10 to 12, and you got that done, and there's still 20 seconds on the clock, and you weren't spazzing out with it, then good indicator you're probably ready to bump up in that weight class. Likewise, if you're using that weight, you're doing a 3-second negative, 1-second positive, and the rep range is between 10 to 12, and you're getting 7 to 6 or 7, it might be a little heavy, so we might need to drop it down. So I think it's also a great way to figure out kind of where you belong within that set.
Yeah,
too.
I know when to increase my weights. There's two things I do. When I hit the top end of the recommended rep count, I'll bump up a lot in the middle of the workout itself. And the second thing I do is, or I might hit kind of exactly in the middle of the recommended rep count, but if I'm doing it because of the fact that I'm using the cadence provided and being very strict, and I'm really confident I can also do it with a heavier weight, I'll do it there too. So there's just a couple different things to use. But another kind of thing I've mentioned before, but like if you're doing something and you have more than 2 or 3 reps left in the tank, that gun to your head, you're going to get up, good quality reps, bump up because it's too light.
Yep, for sure. Another point to add, adding meta builders after class 2 to 3 times a week, depending on goals, muscle group, etc., is a way to continue to build muscle.
Yeah, so I framed this in the context of people that currently implement metabolic training. So if you don't currently implement metabolic training, but you're curious, meta builders are a great way to start. What are meta builders? It's a term I've coined that basically is 10 to 20 minute workouts that are muscle group specific, no more than 2, maybe 3 muscle groups, utilizing time under tension. There's no functional cardio movements though. It's not a full body workout. It's really a bodybuilding specific protocol designed at bringing up weak muscle groups. So if you go on my Instagram, Metabolic Matt, you can see a bunch of examples of different meta builders I do on there that are kind of cool. I actually have had a lot of people tell me that they do them at other gyms or at home.
Yeah.
And they're really great supplemental routines. They're also really great, honestly, guys, if you just have a busy day at the gym or at work and you want to get something in, but you're a little tired or you don't think you can get through a full body metabolic training session. They're quick hitters. They're great. Yeah. So say you want to build bigger arms, do a arm specific meta builder 2 to 3 days a week after your metabolic training session or at a separate time. I would continue doing your metabolic training session because progressing in those exercises you do in there is going to help you a lot too. But focusing on and having fun with it. You can focus on all different elements. For example, there was one I did recently where I did drop sets, where I did 40 seconds of work. I took 10 seconds of rest. I'd cut the weight in half, cut the time in half, did 20, 10 seconds, not even 10 seconds, like 5 seconds of rest. Yeah. Cut the weight in half, did 10 seconds and got a few reps there. There's another one where I focused on mechanical tension. This was actually a really cool one. I called it 40-20. So what I did was I did a movement heavy for 20 seconds, like a weighted chin-up. Yep. And I took, for chest and back, and I took 40 seconds of rest. Then I inverted that and I did a dumbbell press that was a little bit lighter for 40 seconds and took 20 seconds of rest. So what are you doing there? Every minute on the minute, you're doing one or the other. One of them's heavy, one of them's a little more lighter, focused on the metabolic stress aspect and the damage aspect. One of them's a little more mechanical tension related, but super effective. I highly encourage you guys to try that. If anyone has any questions on the meta builders and you want to ask me, just fire me a DM. I'd be happy to answer any questions you guys have about
for sure. Yeah, this is definitely something that I know, like when I come back from pregnancy, that I'm going to be adding into my current regimen, is getting back into some meta builder type stuff to kind of supplement, and it's exciting. I love it. Yeah,
the one thing I'll say too is don't go meta builder crazy.
Right.
Like you kind of need to, especially if all you're doing is bodybuilding and you just want to do meta builders, you could actually stack 2 to 3 meta builders for a related muscle group and get a great workout. Right. That's more bodybuilding focused. You could certainly do that. But if you're currently undergoing full body metabolic training sessions, I would just
go nuts.
I would caution you I would say focus on a couple areas at most at a time. Right. Like most of the ladies I do them with, it's glutes. Most of the guys, it's shoulders, chest, arms, but it's not shoulders, chest, arms, back, glutes, leg.
Right.
It's not all
Right.
of that all the time.
Right. So whatever you want to work on a little bit more.
Recovery will probably be an issue. I mean, you got to be a real diligent person in all aspects of your recovery to handle that. So not something I recommend.
Yeah, I think I'll probably just be hitting some glute ones. That's all.
Yeah, for sure. Let the gains begin.
That's it. Let's go. I keep saying this is my bulk season right now, so I think I'm putting on. I'm just bulking,
Your calves
and then
are probably gonna look
they're gonna
awesome
look
now.
jacked.
Yeah.
The last point, and probably the most important point to finish, maybe not the most important, but definitely an important one, is be patient.
Yeah, so it's funny. People are so impressionable. When I was 19, 20 years old, I would get all the muscle and fitness, bodybuilding magazines, and what's on the cover? It's a ripped dude who's probably on steroids, and it says, gain 15 pounds of muscle in 4 weeks. And I'm like,
Yes.
I want to gain 15 pounds of muscle. I want to look like this guy so I can get girls.
Right.
That's what I want to do. So I bought into it. And when you do that long enough and you're natural, a cold reality sets in. That's not going to happen, guys.
Right.
It takes a very long time.
Yes.
Going back to what I said about adding a pound of muscle, even 1 pound, look at that beef, that steak, those burgers. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot of beef, guys. So be super patient. Go through dedicated periods of time where you're in a caloric surplus. And I wouldn't cut more than once a year if your goal is over time. If you're younger out there listening, or your goal is primarily to build muscle, but you're interested in metabolic training, I would be in a surplus for most of the year, depending on body composition. The first thing I would do if you have a little body fat is I would get lean.
Yeah.
And then I would go in a slight surplus for most of the year. Cut down to look good for summer. I get that. And maybe hit maintenance mode over the summer, and from fall to spring, caloric surplus again, and just rinse, wash, repeat. Is that how it goes? Rinse, wash, repeat?
I think so.
Rinse, cycle, something? Whatever
Grind
it is.
his laundry.
Rinse, spin, something. Whatever it is. I'm not allowed to use the washing machine, guys, so I don't know. I've left too many pens in my pockets.
Oh, God.
But, bottom line, like anything in life, that's great. You need to be patient.
Yes.
How true is that for you, Lyns, with baby Gino? She wants him out right now.
But I gotta be patient.
It'll be the greatest thing that happened in her life, but she's gonna have to be patient.
That's it.
Losing fat, gaining strength, building muscle, waiting to get married through a long engagement, waiting to have a child. These are all great things, but they take time.
They take time, yeah. All good things in life that are worth having take time. So
Absolutely.
Be patient, go through the process, and enjoy the process too, right? Like, I think sometimes, if you're trying to put on the muscle, and I think the people that get the most impatient may be the people that aren't enjoying their training.
Yeah.
So if you can enjoy the process and look at it, hit all the things and all the key principles that we've hit, but while you're hitting all of those principles, do it in a way that you can enjoy. You will receive the benefits in time. Just, keep doing what you love.
At the very least, enjoy that caloric surplus.
Yeah, that's always great.
All right, guys. Well, thanks so much for tuning in to another awesome episode of the Metabolic Experience podcast. We greatly appreciate it, and we will be talking to you again next week. Take care.